Yes.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon, and joining me, my yes companion, is Sejohn. How you doing, Sejohn?
Hey, everybody. What's going on, man?
Well, you know what? We got to get right into it because you and I talked about what we were going to call this episode, and I am calling an audible. This was originally going to be the Skype report because what we originally started recording the show on, Microsoft, I guess it wasn't Microsoft's at the time, the Skype platform is officially dead to be taken over by Teams. What the fuck is Teams? I've never heard of Teams. And so we're going to do an episode called the Skype report. Skype will get its time to shine in the annals of the Say report. But Sejohn, I got Beetlejuiced, only instead of saying Beetlejuice 3 times, I can't believe I just said it 4 times. I'm like so scared about what's going to happen. They said Fletch 3 times, and I'm fucking tired of it. So before we get into, we have a new segment that we're introducing this week's episode. We have a lot of fun things to talk about, but we need to address the motherfucking Fletch in the room, and that is why this is the Fletch Report. Sejohn, do you have any idea what I'm talking about when I say they said Fletch 3 times?
Are they doing another Fletch movie?
No. There's after Confess Fletch, starring Jon Hamm, which was excellent, by the way, and Roy Wood Jr. You might remember him from the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He suddenly became relevant, even though he's been around forever. I love Roy Wood Jr.
Was it Confess Fletch or Fletch Confess?
It was Confess Fletch, because that's the name of the book it's based on, right? I'm going to double check right now before we go any further. Yeah, Confess Fletch is the name of the movie, and it is based on the novel Confess Fletch, which I think is the 3rd one that came out. I don't know. I've never read any of the Fletch novels. I own one of them, but it's the 4th or 5th one, and it felt really strange. Fletch's Fortune is the one that I own. And it felt weird to read that.
Devon says he won't read that until they make a movie out of it.
Isn't that what the second Fletch is about? I don't know. No, whatever. I like
Shirley's Gold?
No. So the one that I do enjoy, I like the second Fletch movie too. The one where they do a nice zippity doo dah parody, because like, oh, Disney won't do it. We'll make the song live forever. It's weird. But that's not what we're talking about. Fletch Lives is the name of the other movie. We're talking about the first Fletch. Now, as we've already said, the character of Fletch, most notably known, it's the 40th anniversary of the film Fletch, so maybe that's the reason why it's seeing such a resurgence as a narrative. And Sejohn, if you're able to correct me if I'm wrong, or an audience member who's listening, please correct me if I'm wrong, Fletch may not have originated the trope that I am giving it credit for, but it is what I think of whenever this happens. And when it happened in one show, an episode of Law & Order, season 24, episode, I have this all written down, I'm sorry. Season 24, episode 11, The Hardest Thing, I got a little upset. And I got a little upset because from the beginning I said this is just a Fletch, and nobody in the house knew what I was talking about. So I was more annoyed at the fact that nobody knew what a Fletch was than I was at the fact that Law & Order, in its 24th season, did a Fletch. And then I was slightly more annoyed at the fact that they never said it's a Fletch, considering Fletch is a Universal film and Law & Order is a Universal television program. So, like, give credit where it's due. Have somebody say, oh, like that old movie Fletch. Like, just do that.
Okay.
But then in Matlock, season 1, episode 10, Crash Helmets On, they did another Fletch, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm tired of this being the narrative, but that's got to be it, right? 2 shows have done it, makes sense for both the shows, I'm fine. But then...
Dev, I think for everybody's sanity, you need to stop and take a second and define what a Fletch is.
I want to give the last thing. I have this all metered out. I know you're crazy. I'm going to ask you if you can determine what a Fletch is. But the last one was this week, on Thursday, season 2, episode 13 of Elsbeth, Tearjerker. They pulled another Fletch, and that is why I am now taking the time on the show to address the Fletch in the room. Sejohn, what do you think of Fletch is while we're talking? Just 2 guys talking.
So the original character of Fletch is that we were talking about, portrayed originally on film. Well, he was in a books first, but portrayed originally on film by Chevy Chase and then eventually by John Hamm, like is about like an undercover. Is
He's a
he a private
journalist.
detective or a
He's a
journalist? He's a
journalist. Yeah.
journalist, but he's an investigator of some kind, and basically he's very goofy, over the top character for Chase to play. Um, that gets into a lot of physical slapsticky comedy. So like, did they just introduce like a random like journalist character that was just like saving the day or something? Like, what does this mean?
No, bit by bit, he's saving the day. No, that is not what I am referring to when I say use the Fletch. So now here's the definition. We're 5 minutes in. For me, a Fletch is when a rich person hires somebody to kill them. That's a Fletch as far as I'm concerned. And that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a bunch of other books before it that use that as a narrative thing. But when I think of the movie Fletch, I think about the fact that he's really sexy. He was in Leave It to Beaver. He's in Virgin River now. What's his name, Sejohn? Who plays Otter in Animal House?
What?
The actor,
Oh,
Timothy something.
Yeah. Why are you asking me this? Where did this come from?
Because he's the one who hires him in Fletch. I'm going to bring up the Fletch IMDb. That'll be the easiest way to do it. So we are talking about Tim Matheson. He plays Alan Stanwyck in Fletch, and he watches the beach where Fletch is in the film Fletch, 1985 Fletch. Spoilers for the 1985 film Fletch. Fletch is doing an investigation on the beach about the drug game, where the drugs are getting from, how these junkies are getting their heroin, and the way that he's done it, because what Fletch is known for is going undercover in order to suss out the truth. That's like his big thing. He's the man of 100 identities, not to be confused with the Master of Disguise, also portrayed by an SNL alum. But yeah, so he is on the beach pretending to be this junkie, getting close to junkies. Fat Sam, played by Norm Peterson himself, George Wendt, is the dealer on the beach. And Tim Matheson's character, Alan Stanwyck, has been watching Fletch this whole time, and he determines, I'm going to hire you to kill me because I'm dying of bone cancer. And then a lot of other things happen, and is revealed that he's not dying of bone cancer. He wanted to use Fletch as the fall guy to like kill his wife or something. I haven't seen Fletch in its entirety, but the inciting action of Fletch I freaking love, because I think it's such a cool story. The idea of this guy who was dying hiring someone to kill him. If you go back in the Adam Sandler Cinematic Universe podcast for Funny People, my borrowed was actually from Fletch, because there's a moment where Adam Sandler's character tells Seth Rogen, I want you to kill me, for the exact sum of money that Alan Stanwyck offers to Fletch. And now, in these three shows, one of them a Universal film, right? Comcast Universal on NBC. The other two on CBS. They've used that exact thing. Only instead of it being a setup for the person ends up dead. The person who hires somebody to kill them ends up dead. And then it's this sort of weird, sad exploration in a lot of ways about how euthanasia is not legal in America. Like, that always ends up becoming a thing. Like...
Okay, man. Just keep going with that. You can't just stop there and expect me to pick up that ball.
One of the situations. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. And if you did pick up that ball, I think you'd go home with it and we'd be thrown over to Will. You know, it's just this weird thing of like the most recent one, the Elsbeth one. And I got to tell you, I watch these shows, and it's always the opening where you're like, oh, this is a Fletch situation. Like, if you're familiar enough with that plot, that trope from Fletch, you could tell in the first 5 minutes that that's what the episode's going to be. And I check right out. And I know that's wrong. I know that I should like not check right out, but it totally like freezes me out. I'm not giving it 100% of my attention. I'm going to admit that. And this Elsbeth, I'm like, oh God, so this woman who clearly looks like an escort or a prostitute, and at the end of the day, she was called a consultant. It was Jordana Brewster. Spoilers for Elsbeth, Season 2, Episode 13, Tearjerker, just heads up. Jordana Brewster from the Fast and the Furious movies. She was also briefly married to Magnum P.I. in the reboot, but then her character just disappeared when they're like, we don't need that anymore. We don't need his wife faked her death in order to be a drug trafficker. That's not important to our Magnum P.I. story. but they introduced it. They definitely introduced it. Devon Decker does not forget. I'm like, she's a consultant, and she was hired because the guy was like losing his marbles. He was dying. He had high cholesterol, all this, to essentially make it so that his death looked like an accident, but also be the one to kill him. There was also the frame my ex-wife and her new boyfriend part of it, but that part wasn't necessary because ultimately it didn't matter to the episode. It was strange. But yeah, like it was that. And then it's the sad thing where like he knew he was dying and he was going to be in pain, so he just wanted me to end it. And then there's that question of like, I mean, that's the thing that happens. As much as we love palliative care and hospice care, like there are places in this world where like if you know you're going to die a painful death, you can go to a doctor and get assisted suicide. And I know that seems like a crazy thing, especially how our world looks right now. We're going to try to not view our world the way it is right now because literally it's on fire. Our world is literally on fire. And I'm happy to be a dog right now, drinking from a cup of coffee in a little bowler hat saying this is fine. It's not fine. I am obsessing over the fact that a trope from the film Fletch is being overused in this season of television. That's one of the ways I'm coping with it, so I don't lose myself in all of the fucking insanity that's going on. But then the Matlock episode, they were in an assisted living facility for older people, an elderly living facility. The guy knew that he was dying of a disease, so he had his girlfriend like end his life by giving him too much medication. And then as payment, he gave her, well, he had already given her his ring, like his high school ring, because they were old people. And that's the only way I guess writers can show two old people are dedicated to each other is by resurrecting. Sejohn, did you even get a high school ring?
Yeah, I got a high school ring.
Did you ever give it to your sweetie?
Huh? No. I've got it here with next to me. Actually,
Is it really right there next to you? That is the coolest fucking thing ever.
Well, I mean, it's in my bedroom, and I record in my bedroom, so yeah, it's in here. Yeah.
Right. Mine is upstairs in an old export soda cracker tin. I could put hands on it in less than 5 minutes. But yeah, so that's how they did it. And then also he gave her a bunch of like money in his will, and he's an older guy, so they made it look like he just died in his sleep. And that was the whole thing. And it's like, at the same time, he asked for like care and stuff like that. And they're like, we can't provide it to you here. You'd have to leave this facility. And he didn't want to be away from the woman that he had fallen in love with later in life. So he had her kill him before it got real painful. And then the one that started it, the one that really like got my wheels churning, that like, oh my God, is this really a trope that we're going to see again? That Law and Order episode. The guy was diagnosed with like Pick's disease, which is a stronger form of Alzheimer, dementia sort of stuff. It's a neurological disorder. And again, he knew it was going to be painful, so he hired a former student to kill him. Or it might have been his wife. It was like one of those situations, and it's just like, I'm tired of this getting used. And I think what really makes me tired, right, is the fact that nobody else seems to know the film Fletch. Heck, in the 4:30 movie, I just said heck, hell, I could say hell. In the 4:30 movie, the movie that they're going to see at 4:30, the titular 4:30 movie, is supposed to be Fletch, but they call it something else. Which makes it weird because the whole movie you got these kids who essentially plex on the weekends by going to their local multiplex, and they're referencing real movies, but then the movies that they're seeing are 3 fake made up movies for the film. And it like really, there's like a disconnect there. It just makes it that like, so every time they mention one of the fake movies, one of them is Dental School, that is mentioned in Clerks. One of them is a takeoff on Flash Gordon that features Diedrich Bader, because he's in all the Kevin Smith films since Jan Silent Bob Strike Back, and he's Beaver Flash Gordon, and it works, I guess. And then the last one is, I cannot even remember the name of the Fletch parody in the film, because it's like ridiculous. It's like it's like, it's offensive. Like it would not be allowed to be the name of a film. Is the fact of it. Because it's just such a ridiculous little name. But yeah, They don't even have it in the storyline plot summary. Let's see if they got the movie that they're going to go see here. Nope, it is so inconsequential to the people who wrote the summaries of the 4:30 movie on IMDb that they forgot to put the name of the movie in any of them. But it's supposed to be Fletch. Excuse me. Excuse me. So, yeah. That's just I'm all fletched up right now, Sejohn. So I wanted to get it off my chest so that we could focus happily on the other things. Bucklick is the name of the film. He's Detective Bucklick. Bucklick. Bucklick.
This was very it was really killing me that you didn't have that name. That I'm really glad you were able to find it. It really brought it all home for me.
I'm super happy. So maybe it's the Bucklick report. No, it's the Fletch Report, because I'm so worked up about it. I'm 16 minutes of the show worked up about it.
Well, Devon, I have hired someone to come and kill me. We're going to do the trope too.
Did you? No! I mean, I think one of the other reasons that I bring it up is because, as I alluded to 60 minutes ago when the world made some semblance of sense, that we're going to introduce a new segment. And there is a small part of me, the tiniest part of me, let's say half a Kevin Weissman-sized portion of Devon Decker, that is fearful that it is going to be a plot line in the new segment that we're going to be introducing today. Why don't you introduce it to the people while I try to find my timer, because we need the timer for this segment. So the floor is yours, Sejohn.
This is not my baby, but I'm happy to talk about it. There's been a new television program that has begun that we feel is hitting just the right notes that the Say Report needs to maybe perk its ears up, pay a little bit more attention. I mean, for Sejohn, there's a couple of things involved in the whole system that I think is going to be key here. The presence of one Stephen Amell cannot be denied for my interests. But for Devon, I'm actually curious to hear why this became such an important thing to him that he felt the need for us to make an entire segment on the show about it.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So basically what we're doing, Suits LA has now been birthed onto the world. Originally planned as a Peacock original series, it was then shifted to USA, where its progenitor series aired. That'd be Suits, for anybody who's not too certain about it. And it's now a broadcast show. We were talking about that. And the first episode of Suits LA, I started off being a bit of a cock. I'm just going to say that. The segment has not yet started, where I'm like, oh, look, there's the Harvey Specter. Oh, look, there's the Louis Litt. Oh, Donna's a boy this time? Like, that's what I was. I was a real cockhole about it. And then I'm going to say 16 minutes into the episode, I realized that the show, though it had, like, some strong characters, pretty much all of the characters were their own creations. And as I kept watching the show, first I realized why the original Suits, the 9 seasons of Suits, created and mostly written by Aaron Korsh, or at least show ran by Aaron Korsh, till I think the 7th season, but he was still very responsible for like creating a lot of the characters and cultivating them, was able to survive the way it did. Because as much as people think about Suits as this bromance, and then like maybe bromance plus, between Harvey Specter and Mike Ross, there is so much more going on in that show that like I absolutely love. And there's so much more going on in that show really relates to the coming and going of actors playing main roles. Like Dule Hill is eventually a main character on the show. Wendell Pierce plays Meghan Markle, the one who got married to British royalty and then had to leave the show because of it. He plays her father, and I love Wendell Pierce. And that goes back to Hackers, but we'll talk about Hackers later. But then like The Wire, he's actually on Elsbeth. Like Wendell Pierce, great guy. Absolutely love this guy. And what I realized watching this first episode of Suits LA, and why I wanted to give it its time to breathe on the show, as long as there are new episodes. It's a 13-episode first season. So the next 13 episodes, we're going to do recaps a week after they air. That's going to be how that kind of works. And we're giving ourselves 16 minutes per recap of the show. It's about a quarter of the length of the show, and that way we don't go too long. It's actually about a third of the length of the show because they're 44 minutes. But yeah, so that's kind of what I want to do here, is focus on Suits LA, because the secret is that Aaron Korsh is able to build these fully rounded characters who you instantly understand the second they're on screen, but then there's still so much nuance to be explored that your show could go on for 9 seasons and a weird spin-off set in LA. Well, actually, it was set in Chicago, but I always think about LA because Pearson, the spin-off series starring Wash's wife, I feel so bad that I cannot remember her name. I was hoping it would come to me.
Oh, no.
Jessica Pearson is her character's name in the show. What is the actress's name? I'm sure you can find it, Sejohn, as I continue.
She's also on Hannibal, too. Yeah,
I didn't know she was in Hannibal. That makes me super happy. And that's post-Suits. So yeah, that Pearson show that was set in Chicago, which made sense. They were trying to compete with The Good Wife. That was the argument there, because The Good Wife was a law show set in Chicago, because it is the 3rd largest metropolitan area in terms of legal disputes. Something I found out when I didn't understand why Underemployed was set in Chicago for some reason. But again, none of them were lawyers, so it doesn't truly jive with me. But we're not here to talk about Underemployed. We'll probably never do that. Or maybe we will when we get tired and there are no more Fletch tropes to take advantage of.
Yeah.
What do you have her name?
Sorry, I got distracted because I accidentally, instead of typing Hannibal Cast, typed in Hannibal Cat.
Oh, nice. And that's I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice 2%.
How is she not coming up in the early cast for Hannibal?
I don't know. I mean, at Firefly or Suits, or even the show Pearson, where she is the titular character.
I didn't realize that they gave her a spinoff, though. That's pretty good.
Yeah, well, it's kind of been buried. It was on Peacock for a while. I mean, the whole...
Gina Torres, by the way.
Oh, Gina Torres. Thank you. So Gina Torres. Now, she didn't show up, but I will hopefully remember her name. That show kind of got buried because it was very different from Suits proper. And it was, it was a spinoff after the fact. After the fact that the show had ended. So it was kind of like a Frasier to Cheers. And honestly, I don't think we're ever going to see a successful Frasier from Cheers move ever again. Look at Joey from Friends. That should have worked. It made enough changes to be a compelling show, and it just didn't work. Are there any other ones that you can think of that have happened post that are
Young Sheldon?
Yeah, Young Sheldon's a pretty solid one. I was actually going to say Major Crimes from The Closer.
Well, and then Young Sheldon in and of itself has its own.
Georgia and Mandy's first marriage.
Which just got picked up for a second season, so we'll see how long that one lasts. But it seems like the Big Bang verse is probably what I would point to.
Yeah, that is the closest one. And again, Closer and Major Crimes, but really they just got rid of Kira Sedgwick and moved up Mary McDonald.
I mean, King of Queens getting us kind of spun off from
Ray Romano.
Everybody Loves Raymond, right?
Yeah. But those were existing at the same time. I think that is the secret sauce to having a successful spinoff. Frasier specifically, Cheers ended, and they're like, so this is what we're going to do next if you're interested, Kelsey. It's not one of those situations where Young Sheldon started alongside the 10th season of The Big Bang Theory, I think. So it was sort of, it had something to anchor it in a way. Ditto, Major Crimes coming from The Closer. Closer season 4 ended, I think, and then Major Crimes started, and it was literally the same cast without Kira Sedgwick. So, I don't know. I mean, Scrubs season 9, right, was supposed to be a spinoff that they ended up turning into the 9th season of Scrubs, which is crazy. Scrubs Med School.
To save it, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a thing that they do. And Pearson, to give it its due, it used to be on Peacock. Last time I checked, it was not on Peacock anymore. But this was also in the time where Suits, of its 9 seasons, only 8 of them were available on Netflix, because the hope was people would devour those 8 seasons, and then seeing, oh my God, there's a 9th season on Peacock, they would subscribe to Peacock. I don't have confirmation of that. So, like, that is definitely a theory, but it's a theory that I have, like, 92% of it being 1,000% true in my mind.
60% of the time, it's right 100% of the time. Right,
and the reason I bring that up is, but the problem is people just thought it was an 8-season show. The number of times, I'm a huge Suits fan. That's the other, like, part of this mixture. That's the chocolate to the peanut butter, or the peanut butter to the chocolate, of the fact that there's a new Suits series. I loved the original series. It premiered right when I came back from working on the ocean. And it became a show that my father and I, like, had a nice bond over. No one else in the house really liked it, but it was a show that we could watch together. And I'm not going to lie, him thinking that being on a cruise ship would be the greatest thing in the world, there was some tension between us. He didn't realize that, like, I don't get to just travel, Dad. I'm working 10 to 16-hour days for $70 per diem, and it's a lot of work. It's not like being a guest on board the ship. It burned me out. Like, I will 100% admit it burnt me out. And when it came to thought of, like, going back out there, I didn't really want to do it. But Suits helped ease the tension between my father and I. It was a show that I think really repaired our relationship post my job with Carnival Cruise Lines. So I have a lot of respect for the show. But yeah, so it ended, and most people didn't know there was a 9th season. I'm like, there's a 9th season, right? They're like, what? Why isn't it on Netflix? And I'm like, oh, it's on Peacock. So I did a little bit of the Peacock's bidding. I'll admit that. Though I don't think any of those people ever got Peacock memberships, if I remember the conversations correctly. But then I also would point out Pearson, and people would be like, oh, I'm not interested in that. And I get that. I understand it. Harvey's not there. It's literally only Gina Torres as Jessica Pearson. DB Woodall as her. I remember DB Woodall's fucking name, but I can't remember Gina Torres's. Her fiance from Suits ends up showing up in a couple episodes as well. But the 4th episode of the series, she goes from Chicago to LA, and literally it is the shot of Griffin Observatory, and the line from Sheryl Crow's All I Want to Do plays, and she just goes, "This is LA." It is the worst transition, and make sure that people understand that now we're in Los Angeles, I think I've ever seen in a television program, and really any sort of media, but it has stuck with me forever. And I cannot see that stock establishing shot of Griffin Observatory without it coming out of my mouth just going, "This is LA." So, like, Suits has got some real estate in my mind. And Suits LA, I was excited about. The Stephen Amell of it, really not really. I was excited to see what another Suits show, specifically set in LA instead of New York, would be. So that's why we're going to be covering these little recaps of the series. You saw the first episode, Sejohn?
I did. I've got some questions, and I don't know if it's appropriate to ask them now or when the timer's going.
So we'll start at the 30-minute mark. I have the timer in my hand. I have 16 minutes on the timer, and then we'll start there. So is there any, like, brief stuff you want to bring up in this minute and 20 seconds before we start this?
Just so that we don't waste our entire segment talking about this, how is this a Suits show?
That's a good question, Sejohn. I know that there are, from Will, our quizmaster, there have been some hints at characters who will be showing up from the original series. But yeah, based on the first episode, that's a pretty good fucking question. Because when they said Sam, I was, like, pretty sure it was going to be Katherine Heigl's character from Suits. And even then, like, I don't 100% know if that was her name in the show. But that's where my mind went. I'm like, oh, isn't that Katherine Heigl's character? Wasn't she Samantha? And I'm like, that would be something if she had some relationship to this character of Ted Black. But yeah, I gotta look her up real quick because I do not remember. Katherine Heigl was Samantha Wheeler, and she was referred to as Sam. So, like, that's where my head went is, oh my God, imagine if Sam Wheeler and Ted Black had something going on. What a great way to tie it to Suits. And then Sam was some black-haired woman. And I set 16 on the clock. We're starting to Suits LA recap right here. I've been working on a bit of a theme song. It's going to get better every week. I cannot find the lyrics that I thought I sent to myself. So we'll recap Suits LA. It could be a one and done, and that's all we'll say. But if it gets renewed, we're going to keep on doing it. It Suits LA on the Say Report. All right, so the first episode of Suits LA, you have some questions. Why don't we start with those questions?
Well, that was
your big one. That was your big one. Okay.
I had is like what makes this a Suits show? Like other than the fact that it's just lawyers.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, that's the other thing. I wonder if this was originally a Suits show or just like an LA-based law firm show that Aaron Korsh had created. Suits had that bit of a renaissance with the Netflix series. Gabriel Macht, a.k.a. The Spirit. Remember the Spirit movie? It's okay that you don't. I've never actually seen it, but I really want to. I want to cover it on the show. It's super in our wheelhouse. But Gabriel Macht from The Spirit and the character of Mike Ross, I cannot remember that actor's name to save my life. And honestly, he abandoned the show when Meghan Markle left to get married to British royalty. So it's okay that I can't remember it. But they were in a bunch of commercials. They were like in a Super Bowl commercial in character as Mike and Harvey. So they had a huge resurgence. So the fact that one of the streaming networks, streaming services, decided let's resurrect Suits, and why wouldn't it be Peacock since it was a Comcast Universal property on the USA Network, it made sense. And I was very excited about it. I did not care that Steve Amell was in it. I didn't know that Brian Greenberg was in it. He was the Nick in October Road, which was definitely one of my pandemic shows. He also shows up in Friends with Benefits, is the one with Mila Kunis, right?
Correct. Yes.
He's the guy. He's Parker in Friends with Benefits, who like lies to Mila Kunis and sleeps with her and then leaves as a one night stand in the middle of the night. I love Brian Greenberg. I think he's really good. Lex Scott Lewis and John, whoever plays Stewart. Josh McDermott. Really wasn't aware of that stuff. It's the show I was excited about, though, because I liked the original series of Suits. And then I was blown away because this is set in LA, obviously, based on the title. But instead of being like a criminal, they were criminal defense attorneys in Suits, and they handled like some real estate and things like that and business law. But a lot of the times they ended up being the defense. The firm of Black Lane, Ted Black, Steve Amell, our hero, and Stuart Lane, our Dick, right? Everybody in the house the first time he showed up on the screen went, this guy's the Dick. This is the guy we're going to hate. They started the law firm 12 years before the start of the series. Black Lane, when the two pillars of Black Lane, and not associates, just Black Lane, is entertainment law on the Black side and criminal defense on the Lane side. And the crazy thing is, imagine if Sejohn and I, right, we started a podcast 9 years ago, but imagine if I, Devon Decker, hated that Sejohn is bald. Like, just hated a central thing about the person that is Sejohn. That's your Ted Black character. Ted Black loves, like, he cannot stand being a defense attorney anymore. He was a prosecutor in New York, and he put away mobsters and mafia members and all of this, gangsters. Like, he did a lot of stuff as a district attorney, as a prosecutor. And Stuart Lane, as a criminal defense lawyer, he hates criminal defense lawyers. But he understands that if you're going to start a friggin' firm, like, that's a viable path to go down. So he shored up with his best friend, Stuart Lane, a person that in the first episode he says, I consider him my brother, despite the fact that he hates criminal defense law. Because he doesn't understand how anybody could represent somebody who is guilty. Like, how do you do that? And then, they introduce a cute blonde. Her name is Amanda. And she gets him that everybody deserves to have someone fight for them. Like, that's how our legal system is built. So it's not really that I'm defending people who are guilty, is the fact that our legal system in America says that everybody deserves to have somebody who will fight for them. I mean, you have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided to you by the state or municipality, depending on what you're being arrested for. So that's like the central core of the show, is the Black Lane law firm. And they're going to do this merger with this mysterious other law firm that was run by Sam. And it's not Samantha Whaler from Suits. We covered that earlier. And Ted is dragging his feet on this merger. Stewart is a real big fan of it. Ted eventually agrees to the merger. And then the next morning, the entire law firm has been cleared out, except for Ted's right-hand man, his Mike Ross. Though this time, this Mike Ross actually has a law degree. He's not lying about it the way that he did in Suits. That was like the pretty big thing of Suits in the first, I'd say, 5 seasons. And then
I was going to say that was kind of the driving story of Suits, was that there was a guy there that didn't actually have he had to fake being a lawyer. But anyway, keep going.
But he passed the bar, but he wasn't in the state of Virginia, where if you can pass the bar, you can legally represent people. Thanks, Clerks, the animated series. Except for his right-hand man and the other woman who works in entertainment law, Erica Rollins, who really wants to get the promotion to head of entertainment law, but it had already been promised to Rick, the right hand. Despite the fact that Erica is better in the room, Rick is the better manager. That's the argument that we are given a bunch of times. So the law firm is cleared out of everything except for sports and entertainment law. And now it's up to Ted Black to go and try to save the law firm from bleeding out and dying because he got screwed over by the person he believed to be his, like, not biological brother, but brother in, like, adversity, and we've conquered so much together. The way that I view Sejohn and Will as brothers, right? Yeah, I love you guys. Yeah, I don't think I say it more than I should, but I still don't know if I say it enough. But yeah, so that's the whole thing. But additionally to that whole storyline is the fact that Stephen Amell, Ted Black, his father, played by Matt Lesher, is dying. And that's a big, like, thorn and chip on his shoulder. And that is the closest thing that makes this Suits-like, is the fact that we see that he has a bad relationship with a parent. Because Harvey Specter had a really fucked up relationship with his mother because of his father. So that's like, that's the thing where they're like trying to drive and be like, oh, there's some secret with Stephen Amell and his father and their relationship. Which I'm pretty happy that they ripped the Band-Aid off in the first episode. We know what the issue is. Matt Lesher, his father, go fuck yourself. You deserve to. Spoilers for the show. These are recaps. So we do expect that you have seen the show, or if you're never going to watch the show, understand that we're going to reveal big plot points of it. He goes to see his father at the advice of John Amos. Yes, that John Amos playing himself, which is, I hate when shows do that. It's a little buck licky for me, if we're going to be honest. Because why is John Amos, but Victoria Justice is Dylan, the new fucking action star at WB, and Kevin Weissman is playing a film director, whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head. I remember the guy that he killed. Oh, Lester. Lester is his name. I thought that his partner's name was Lester. Lester Thompson, Kevin Weissman. My old buddy, Kevin Weissman, who I was hanging out with in New York about 10 years ago. I hope all is well, Kevin, if this gets in front of you. Time. It's such a funny thing, Sejohn. But yeah, so he says he goes to visit his father because John Amos, playing John Amos, says, you don't do it for him, you do it for you. He visits his father on his deathbed and he says, I'm going to let you die alone because you killed my brother the day that you went to prison. Which, Sejohn, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about this part, because this feels like the Sejohn part of the episode.
What do you, I don't have much to say about this so far. I'm curious to see where they're going to go with this whole thing. I spent the entire time trying to figure out how they were going to tie it into Suits. Like no joke. Spent the entire time waiting for something to show me why it was a Suits show. And to that point, like I couldn't even tell you if I enjoyed my time watching this episode because by the time it was over, I was like, I don't understand why it suits LA.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a very good argument. All right, because what we're talking about, generally not a big fan of ghosts in television shows. It used to be something I call out all the time. The Irrational for the first season, I was pretty sure his sister was a ghost until the 7th episode when another person interacted with her. And by all accounts, she may have been a ghost until we need to make her a real character. The ghost thing's not going to work here. But when we first meet Ted Black, he is awoken from a nightmare. And the nightmare is like one of the last things he did in New York, which he was going to get a former mob enforcer to turn on his boss. And then the mob enforcer ended up having cold feet and backing out of it. So we see Ted Black, who's supposed to be our hero in this series. He's is very much meant to be the Harvey Specter of the show. There's enough differences, but he's got that like unending supply of confidence, and the way that he commands any room he walks into. Those would both be defining character traits of the two characters, like pretty obviously. Excuse me. So he goes to this former mob enforcer who's going to back out from testifying against his former boss, and he essentially blackmails him into doing it by saying, your daughter committed the crime, and we were going to, give her a break on that, not send her to jail. But if you don't make good on your deal to testify against this dude, then your daughter will go to jail. I have to imagine the daughter's probably older than 18. I don't think she's a juvenile, just to mention it. And then as he's leaving the house that Billy, the mob enforcer's in, it explodes. It just straight up explodes. And I know that only the three of us and the couple of nurses in there are supposed to know this at this time, but Billy dies. And I think there's a lot of lost storytelling in Suits LA, and I don't think that's going anywhere. I think it's going to be a lot of the modern day stuff juxtaposed against what he was doing in New York in 2010. So we're going to see what he does with those 24 hours in the next episode. That's like my prediction for what we'll be talking about next week in the Suits LA recap. But yeah, so like that, he has a nightmare about that, and he wakes up and his brother is there, and he is an actor. He has Down syndrome. That's just a fact. And he's like, are you okay? He's like, I'm just thinking about New York. I'm thinking about the things that went down while we were in New York. And I'm just having difficulty sleeping. And his brother, it's Carson A. Egan, who is playing the role of Eddie Black. Suits LA is his only credit. He's a great job. I really love the scenes that he's in. But then it is revealed, as he said on his deathbed, you wanted to spend your last day, to his father as he's dying, you said you wanted to spend your last day before you went to prison with me, but what you ended up doing was killing my older brother. There's a 4-year difference in age between the two of them. And apparently his father killed him so that he wouldn't be a burden on him. So any interaction that we see with his, the brother is still 17 in his mind. That's how he appears as a ghost. It is like a ghost and a memory that he is talking to. And I don't know if it's going to continue or not. Looking at the Suits page on IMDb, Carson A. Egan is only in 1 episode. So it just being like a driving force behind Ted's actions, I'm okay with. I don't know if I'd love if he's constantly having conversations with the ghost of his dead brother. And I think you only get away with that one time, right? Like once it's revealed, it becomes a little strange.
Right, and I think that once they reveal what's going on, because so one of the biggest things about this whole plot line is that it's pretty obvious from moment one that something is going on. There's a couple of different clues. First of all, just in the filming of it, it is always in the dark. It is always just the two of them in his house. There's like a bunch of that sort of shit. But also there's this element to it where he's told about how his father is dying and all of this stuff, and you're not quite sure what his relationship is to Eddie just yet, because they haven't really gotten into it yet. But you get the feeling that they're siblings, but you're like trying to figure it out. And I literally turned to my family as we were watching it and said, I can't believe that would be his brother, with the story that we also have going on about his father, and the fact that we have not watched the two of them like talk about it, or that he's not making more of an effort.
Yeah.
And what come to find out is what's going on is that That's because he's not real the whole time, right? But there's definitely like there's little shit dropped. There's little hints dropped throughout that let you know that something is up this entire time.
Yeah.
And once they reveal, but to your point, once they reveal what that is, I don't know the point in continuing in that, right?
Right.
Because you lose kind of that whole magic of like of the mystery of like what is actually happening here.
Yeah. And it felt like it was more like the anniversary of his brother's death, especially with the whole what do you want to do today? I just want to spend it with you. Like he wants to remember his brother on the anniversary of the day that he passed away, which had to have been like at least 15 years ago too, right? Like it wasn't a recent passing away because they have this flashback sequence to when Ted is 14 and his brother is 17 and they're drinking yoo-hoo on outside of like a convenience store. Also realizing that his name is Ted and his brother is Eddie, and for some reason Edward, like a nickname for that, is Ted. Like there's just a lot. That's a very similar name. I don't know. Your father's name is Ed, so I don't want to bring up any issues or anything.
Well, I also normally think of Theodore when I think of Teddy, but I guess you're right. I
Yeah.
guess it could be
Well,
for Edward.
I worked with a guy who went by Ted, and then I'm like, I'm trying to send you an email. I can't find you in the nest. He's like, oh, it's because I'm under Edward, and I'm like, oh, okay. I guess we're just making up nicknames for ourselves. Like, I didn't say
That is
that.
kind of how nicknames work.
Yeah, right. That's nicknames are supposed to be given to you by another person. All down that free. But anyway, we're coming to the end of the first suit delay. Basically, what is set up is that Ted Black will be fighting against Stuart Lane to keep the company that he and him built 12 years ago alive. I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the suits like intrigue. But I will co-sign Sejohn's question as we wrap this segment up with what makes this Suits LA. Is a good question. Because right now there's not a lot that ties it to the Suits verse other than it sharing a creator.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have some conversations as we talk more about this show.
Yeah. So that's it. So that's our 60 minutes on Suits LA. It's 13 episodes. I believe it's going to be an episode a week. I can't think of anything that would preempt it, especially since it's on a premium cable network. So there's 12 more of those coming. And as we learn more, like, I was just really excited about the show. And I didn't think I was going to feel as excited and amped up after the first episode as I ultimately did. I thought it was just going to be like a cheap cash-in, and so far it does not feel that way, and I'm happy about that.
No, I want to make it clear. Like, I'm happy that it's its own show and doing its own thing. It's just it's interesting to me the choice to make it a Suits sequel series of some kind because I'm curious to see what it is they bring over. I'm getting the impression it's going to be more about vibes than it is going to be about world building.
Right.
In which case, that's cool. But then, what are the vibes of Suits? I don't know. We'd have to like
Intrigue,
they're gonna have to define those for me.
backstabbing, secrets, and all of that stuff, and a deep-seated love for a few good men. Which, if you didn't catch it, the first episode is called "Every Day of the Week and Twice on Sunday," which is one of those quotes from A Few Good Men that lives rent free in my head. So, yeah. So I don't know. I'm excited about it. And I guess the last thing I'm going to say is that it does confirm to me that Aaron Korsh is able to build these really interesting worlds. And it's a world that I'm excited to go back into. And again, I think Sejohn brings up a good point because, like, it is a second sequel series to Suits in so many ways. That was a lot of S sounds. I apologize. But then I think about other spin-offs that happen, like NCIS LA, or NCIS New Orleans, or NCIS Hawaii, or NCIS Sydney, or NCIS Origins. NCIS, itself a spin-off of JAG, and then JAG ran for 2 more seasons while NCIS was running. Like, it just makes sense that Naval Criminal Investigative Services happen all over the world. So, like, when NCIS Los Angeles first aired, it was so different from the series that was taking place in Washington, the NCIS series proper. And then eventually you have those crossovers and you understand why these exist in the same universe. Of course, NCIS Los Angeles also crossed over with Scorpion and Hawaii Five-0 and Magnum PI. So, like, that was weird because it kind of got a little Saint Elsewhere-y with how all of these shows have to exist in the same universe.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that there was nothing in this first episode of Suits LA that did tie it to the first series or even to Pearson was a little strange. I will agree with you on that. So let's look forward to solving that mystery as we delve deeper into the series proper. Now it's time for other stuff to talk about on the Say Report. Well, you got Sejohn. How was your last week?
Pretty good. Been playing a couple of different new things this week. As far as like new stuff goes, me and the family have been checking out Big Helmet Heroes. Have you heard of this yet?
No. What is Big Helmet
It's
Heroes?
the easiest thing to think about is it's very Castle Crashers in that regard. Biggest complaint about it right now is that, as far as I can tell, at least on the Switch, it's only two player at most couch co-op, which is a bit of a bummer because like one of the big things about Castle Crashers that was so good was it was up to 4 people and we would just have a fucking blast with that. But for anybody that doesn't know what that is, it's basically a beat 'em up with like just a really good like medieval coloring to it, right? And Big Helmet Heroes is very much that. But the stylistic like nature of the game is really the selling point for me. Like at the end of the day, like it's just fucking funny. It's just silly, cartoony. So there's this medieval kind of veneer to the whole thing, right? Like so you're playing as these like knights that are going through town. One of the knights is like a traditional knight. One of them is like got like more ninja-esque skills. Another one has more like magic skills. But you're picking up weapons as you go, right? And you're picking up some traditional stuff, like you're picking up some swords and some magic wands and some crossbows and things and arrows and things like that, right? But then you're also picking up just some wild ass shit. Like I think at some point I straight up picked up the portal gun from Rick and Morty and was like able to like move around the table, the room, the screen, right? Or like I picked up like a plunger gun, right? And you're just like hitting people with plungers and watching them fall over. So there's just also just like over the top ridiculous stuff, and like the entire thing also is just slick. Like it just looks good. Has a really good like opening like animation style. Felt a little bit like Illumination in some of its like Looney Tunes-esque comedy, right?
Nice.
So it's just a fun time. But yeah, right now it's only 2 player, which I think is like the biggest bummer of it, is that if it could be a really big like 4 player chaos game, I think it would really benefit from that. But that being said, it's a blast.
I remember seeing it. I did not realize it had come out in February. It came out February 6th. And it was something I was interested in. And it also really weirdly ties into some of the gaming I've been doing this week.
Mm-hmm. What have you been up to?
So the Casey Jones DLC release for Splintered Fate. I did tell everybody to make sure I uninstalled it from my Steam Deck. However, a friend that we had gotten together for Splintered Fate when it came out on the Switch proper, because it came out on Switch about 6 months before the Steam Deck version dropped, and that's a hyperbole, an estimation. It may have been only 4 months. It may have been 8 months. Who knows? But the people that we got it with, because we had gotten it with a group of people that we had played Shredder's Revenge with, we all kind of picked up Splintered Fate on the Switch, and we tried playing it, and it was sort of a miserable experience. We talked about it on the show. Would miserable be the way you would describe that experience?
I mean, it pretty on par with Switch. Like I think the story of the Switch Online is going to be unfortunate, right? But yeah, sure, horrible.
Yeah. So now that they've released the Casey DLC and it made it better on Steam, one of our friends, Zach from This Toy Makes Me Happy, he had picked up the DLC of the Casey Jones because he was going on a family vacation. So he figured, I'll download that and I'll have it to play while we're on vacation. And he got back and now he's all amped up and wants to play it again. So we've had a couple of sessions, one session of 4 players, one of 3, playing through Splintered Fate as a co-op game again. And we beat Shredder. I'm going to say 4 out of the 5 attempts that we went on. That one that we failed, we collected every portal of power that we went by. And co-op definitely modifies the strength and health pool of the enemies that you fight. So essentially we were fighting characters 6 times stronger than us.
Nice.
And we paid for it. That's the nicest way to say it. But it's been a good time playing it again. And what I was thinking last night is I love beat 'em ups. Beat 'em ups are like my favorite genre of video game. And I would really like a good beat 'em up that exists on a 3D plane like this. And looking at Big Helmet Heroes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, there's even some goofiness where like in the tutorial they're teaching you how to like jump over things and you don't even really need to. Like you could just walk down and around shit. Like I guess you would technically call this 2.5D, right? Because it is on a 2D
It's like
field,
isometric.
but it is definitely 3D.
Yeah, it's isometric styling. But yeah, I'm like I really wish that there was a beat 'em up game that was like this, because I have fun with Splintered Fate. I talk about it all the time on the show. I will now only be playing it co-op, and even then, we've kind of done everything you can do in co-op with our last couple of sessions. So
nice.
I don't know if we'll be continuing or not, but if we are, I'll let you know. But yeah, so the problem though is the rogue-like nature of it. So like, you might get a character who synergizes really well with the other people you're playing with, or you could get screwed because of the choices that you're given. So what I do have to ask about Big Helmet Heroes is there any sort of that rogue element, or like is the character kind of the character you've got and then basic beat 'em up, like you can pick up different sort of weapons as you're going through? Like
it's more the latter.
Right, nice.
You pick a type of character, right? There's a heavy, right? There's a sword guy, there's a quick guy, there's that sort of stuff. So like you pick that character and that's kind of your baseline, but then they can all pick up whatever other weapons are out in the world and they all behave differently. There's like a heavy attack versus a light attack, that kind of stuff. That's about as elaborate as it gets in that regard.
I gotta
but it
tell
really
you,
is like a true beat 'em up.
You say that. You say light attack, heavy attack. That now needs to be the standard for me to enjoy a beat 'em up game. I know that might sound like go fuck yourself about it, but Power Rangers, Rita's Rewind, they released a huge update to the game. They added.
So you platinumed that.
I did platinum that game, and the way that I platinumed that game is that basically they added modifiers that do not shut off trophies. So I turned it into basically a Power Rangers revenge fantasy. Where
Nice.
everything dies in one hit, and they've added stats. It's your strength, your defense, and your speed. Each ranger starts with their own stats, but then at the end of the level, you can level up based on the points that you've collected. And it really feels like now the Power Rangers game, maybe not the morphing like modifiers that they've added, but the fact that you can actually have stats that make the Rangers feel different from each other. And, you can level it up so that they all eventually are on a level playing field. That has a graphic tied to it. Like when your character is fully leveled up, they have a little lightning bolt in their color next to their name to show that they have the highest stats that they can have. And nice. That feels like, now the game is finally what they wanted to, but they rushed it to market. So, I mean, it's weird. It's a weird sort of situation with the Power Rangers game. But one of the reasons that game is, like, not fun, or, like, in the beginning was not fun, is that all you had was, like, the attack button. And basically every Ranger had the same punch, kick sort of combo. So there was no nuance. Thinking back to like the first River City Girls, like the fact that you have a light and a heavy, like so much of the speed run of that game is learning the fastest way to kill, the fastest combo to kill things, which is light, heavy, does the most damage and the quickest DPS. So that's the fastest way to clear before you start leveling up your character. So I am very happy to hear that Big Helmet Heroes has a light and a heavy attack. I know that's like crazy because it should just be baseline now that we're not making them for the arcade. We're like, 3 buttons. We're just trying to keep this thing as simple as possible. But now you have a controller in front of you. Mm-hmm. You can do so many things with that controller. All right. Like Guns of Fury, they use every button. And now people are mad because like there's no button for this because you use the other buttons for other things. I want an aim lock. Well, there's no aim lock. We didn't put that into game.
Too
Sorry.
bad. Well, I mean, that's you're starting to get into the territory of this complaint would basically be like counter to the whole point of this game. Like,
Right.
if you do want that, play a different game.
Yes. And that's cool. So I'm happy to hear about Become. I'm a little bummed because I looked it up on Steam that it's only couch co-op. It would be great if it had an online mode. Though again, I'm complaining about the Splintered Fate. I am working in a fully functional dev layer right now. Since the desk replacement, I now have all three of my monitors are popping again, and I have like the switches actually plugged into the internet to make the internet as good as it could possibly be. Right?
Nice.
So hoping, right? I'm hoping that it will do things. But playing Splintered Fate the last couple of nights, the loading times are still atrocious. Once it load in, the game does not feel bad. Like it used to be like we're loading for 7 minutes and then the game still kind of felt choppy and a little bit like I'm lagging behind the others or others are lagging behind me. So I'm happy about that, but I wish that Switch had better online. Especially since I pay for it. Like, I pay for the online on my PlayStation. I paid for online on my Xbox. I pay for it on my Switch, and it is still the worst experience playing online games.
It's my biggest hope for the Switch too, is that they figure something out in that regard. If they can make the online experience all around. I mean, not just playing together online, but even like the shop is just a nightmare for me sometimes.
Well, one of the weird things is, so Splintered Fate, the Steam version of it, has a link to purchase the DLC. There is no link in the Switch version. And initially I thought, oh, well, maybe it's because they don't want, like, to be selling to kids. But then Splinter's Revenge has a link to go buy the DLC. Like, you're accidentally buying the DLC on the Switch version of Shredder's Revenge, no matter where you are. So, so that can't be it. It's just, I don't know why they didn't implement it that way. I think they're just done with the Switch version in so many ways.
Yeah. Probably.
Which is disappointing because Splintered Fate has a pretty solid story that I don't think we're going to get to see the end of. Please prove me wrong, Super Mega Boss Studios or Super Mega Corporation. I'm in their Discord. What is their called? Super Evil Megacore is the name of the company that does Splintered Fate. So maybe I'm getting exactly what I deserve, Sejohn. I've also been playing a new game besides that. Do you ever hear of the game Monolith?
Yeah. Wow. You've been checking Monolith out?
Well, it's back in Dunkey form. Star of Providence is the game Monolith, rebranded after Big Mode bought it because Dunkey loved it so much, and they've completely built the game up and out.
Oh.
So
Okay.
Monolith, the twin stick shooter, right? Like, I want to make sure that we're talking about the same game. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's now Star of Providence. It came out 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's why I've been getting recommendations for that on Steam. Okay.
Yeah, did you have Monolith on Steam? Did you ever own it?
Yes.
So
Yes.
congratulations, you now own Star of Providence. You don't need to
all right.
rebuy it. You know what? We're gonna hold this conversation because I'm not a huge twin stick shooter guy. I'll admit that. Binding of Isaac, I will play at a friend's house, but I will never buy it because I fucking hate the framing device of the story. I'm just gonna be honest with you. It's a lot. Also, the gameplay is a little ploopy for me. A little ploopy ploppy. I don't love, like, when he's just regular tears, the way that he attacks. So I was a little about Star of Providence, but I'm like, you know what? I keep seeing the stuff, and it keeps looking like a lot of fun. I'm going to give it a shot, and I'm super happy that I have. But let's hold off talking deeper about it since you also have the game if you owned a Monolith, and I'd be interested how it compares and contrasts to the original version of the game.
Okay.
So, yeah, but I've been playing it, and I'm in love with it. I'm really in love with my time with it, which I did not think was going to happen. And I think one of the issues with that, this is just a small thing, and then we'll dive deeper into it after we got some Steam stuff to play, Sejohn and I, to report back on. But I thought it was going to be like intensely fast, and it's not that. It moves at like a speed that is fun. I thought it
Yeah,
was going to
yeah,
be
yeah.
like crazy fast because all of the trailers for the game make it look like an insanely fast game.
Yeah, it looks like a bullet hell, but I mean,
And
I
there
don't
are
want to
bullet
act
hell
like it doesn't get.
sequences. Yeah. Oh yeah. The
Yeah,
bosses.
yeah,
Some of the bosses have been like, but even then, like you are in such good control of your character that I never feel like you ever play. I'm gonna say R Type. Where like R Type, you can sort of speed up your ship indefinitely. I know there's a cap, but I don't think I've ever hit it. Like there are times where you go too fast in R Type. So that like, oh, I'm gonna hit the up button and you'll move up like 4 pixels.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it's not as precise as you want it to be in like a side scrolling shoot 'em up like that. So I am I'll hold off on it, but I cannot believe how much fun I've had with the game because I didn't think that was going to be the case. But it's been a good time. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. So yeah, and you got everything just by buying into Monolith at the beginning. You don't have Monolith Original anymore. That is the thing. It is officially like we talked about. We're afraid of things supplanting the things that came before. Monolith, as it was known, is gone. It is now Star of Providence. For better or for ill, we will find out next episode. So I only had one other thing to talk about because I was going to probably get 20 minutes out of that. Anything else you want to talk about before I introduce the last thing that I had?
The only other thing is that I've been also diving into some older Switch games
Ooh,
just because I'm
nice.
just waiting to see what's going to happen with the Switch 2 and all that. I finally actually played my version of Layton's Mystery Journey. Did you ever check out the non-Professor Layton game
No,
on the
I've only
Switch?
ever played the second one on the DS.
Mm.
And they were not really games that for me, but there's a no like Garfield without Garfield Professor Layton game.
Yeah, yeah, Layton's Mystery Journey, and it's all about his daughter.
Oh, cool.
From what I can gather from the story as I'm playing through it. But yeah, so it's basically Professor Layton. For anybody that's never played those games, they're puzzle games in like the truest sense, like all sorts of different types of puzzles, the panagrams and crosswords and fill in the blanks and all sorts of stuff like that. Like just some basic puzzle work, but then obviously like blown out to like really extreme levels eventually. But it's all strung together the way that Professor Layton games work. They're all strung together in these like mystery. Some often there's like a one weird element. Like I think the diabolical box is like Pandora's box, essentially that kind of thing. Like there's always some very Sherlock Holmes over the top esque nature of like somehow like it's hinted at that this thing could be the end of the world if it's not solved by Professor Layton. And in this one, I haven't quite gotten to the mystery yet, but there's a talking dog, which is interesting.
Oh, nice.
That everybody's just like, oh my god, that dog could talk. Anyway, let's solve this puzzle. What? I
We're,
want to talk
we're
about the
really
talking
just
dog.
gliding past the talking dog. Okay.
Yeah. Even the talking dog is like, guys, I'm a talking dog. So it's also that's the other beauty of the Professor Layton games is that there's these mystery stories, you're solving these puzzles, but the other big thing is that it's also just has this gorgeous animation conceit that it feels like a Studio Ghibli film. And like I've spent more time watching this game than I have playing it, which is dangerous, right? Like that can get a little
Mm-hmm.
dangerous if it's too much of that. But the animation is just so good, and like the stories are so funny and fun that like it's just they're gorgeous games too. This is the only one that's on a console. The rest are, as Devin mentioned, on Game Boys. I believe one was on the DS and then two were on the 3DS. Um, if I remember
I
correctly.
will get that
There's
information
been
as you talk.
talks. There's been talks about bringing them back, like redoing them for the Switch and all that, or possibly doing another Professor Layton game on the Switch. But I'm not holding my breath. Like I love these games, but they're one of those franchises that Nintendo always kind of seems to forget that they have until suddenly one day they remember, and then they put like a really awesome game out, and then they forget about it again for 5 more years. Um, but yeah, so I've been playing Layton's Mystery Journey for a little bit, and it's pretty fun. It's the subtitle on it is Catriel and the Millionaire's Conspiracy.
Yeah. So it looks like there is the original trilogy that was on Nintendo DS, the prequel trilogy, which is one on the DS, two on the 3DS.
Oh, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Was the prequel trilogy.
An
Okay.
iOS Android spin-off called Layton Brothers Mystery Room. Then Professor Layton did meet Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, and now you have Layton's Mystery Journey, Catriel, and the Millionaire's Conspiracy. And coming out this year is Professor Layton and the New World of Steam, which is a 2025, but it doesn't have a release date yet.
Yeah, so I'm curious if that's going to be a Switch 2 game, which would be cool.
Yeah.
I hope so. But yeah, the Leighton Phoenix Wright game is hilarious because it really is just the combination of those two games. So the Phoenix Wright games are the courtroom games, right? So what you're doing with Professor Layton is you're gathering up the clues for Phoenix to then use in the courtroom scenes, but they're just the basic same like they you are basically just doing Professor Layton stuff when you're Professor Layton, and then just doing the courtroom drama stuff when you're Phoenix Wright. It is the most. It works so well together, but also there is no effort put in to make anything different than what those two game series are.
I also really dig that in America it's Professor Layton and the Diabolical Box, but in Australia and Europe it's Professor Layton and Pandora's Box. Because like that kind of just takes away that little bit of mystery that definitely existed in that game. Like, I'm not even trying to be rude. Like, that's the only one that I've played. That is the one that I played. Someone, talking about my cruise ship times, someone had it on their DS and was like, I'd be interested to see how you feel about this. And I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And I enjoyed it, but not enough to ever buy one of the games. So that's cool.
It is a very particular genre of game. Like that type of puzzle game, even within puzzle games, is kind of hit or miss for some people. Like the act of Puzzle Agent was a lot like this too, where you just you're walking around, you're interviewing people, and then randomly somebody will be like, "Hey, help me figure out how to get my sticks picked up in my backyard in the most efficient way possible." And you're like, "Okay, weird. I'm in the middle of trying to solve a murder, but yeah, let's see if we can figure out this math problem."
But then somehow picking up those sticks, you're like, is this a finger? The corpse was missing a finger. Well, you can have it. I'm interested in my sticks. Okay.
Well, it's even weirder than that. Yeah. It's always like, these sticks are all left-handed. That gives me an idea about what's going on with the corpse. It's like, what the fuck?
What do you mean these sticks are left-handed? Don't worry about it, boy.
And what did it tell you about a dead body?
Yeah, I mean, like I dig that type of game, like that over the top sort of like humor in terms of the puzzle stuff. Like I said, I enjoyed my time with it. It's just, I don't know, they're not the type of thing I'd want to spend my money on. I'll spend my time on it, but not my money. And especially that's like working overseas. Like a DS game was $60.
Well, yeah, and these are Nintendo proper games, so they're always going to be like, I think this one was $40 at its cheapest.
Yeah,
Layton's Mystery Journey, and it's been out for 5 years now. I think.
Yeah, it came out on the 3DS too. The 3DS version was 2017, and then August 9th, 2018 for the Switch.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, Sejohn, I hate to do this to everybody, most importantly to you. We're going to talk about the last episode of My Name is Earl and how it's a disappointment. Because, God, I remember it. I remember when's the last time you watched the series finale of My Name is Earl? Conservatively.
I think I watched it once when it was probably not live, but probably recorded at the time.
Okay,
so not since it aired.
Yeah, that's fair. And honestly, I think one of the reasons why I've been hesitant to go back to My Name is Earl, I've definitely watched the series multiple times. This is probably my third viewing of it, but knowing how it ends really is kind of a bummer. But we've had this big sort of resurgence. Ethan Suplee led the charge, and then Greg Garcia talked about it as well. These were both on other podcasts. I don't remember what, but they talked about the ultimate end game of the series, My Name is Earl. Have you heard this at all? Like how they were going to end the series? All right. So what was going to happen in the series finale of the show, as they had it mapped out, because they had like a Bible, and then the really sad thing about the series finale of My Name Is Earl is that they ended it on a cliffhanger, and 100% of the time, you ended on a cliffhanger because you're trying to leverage the company and the network into giving you another season. It's the reason why Sam Beckett never made it home. Come to find out, they ended it on a cliffhanger because they were told, you're getting a 5th season. Ended on a cliffhanger. We're guaranteeing you a 5th season of My Name Is Earl. Because My Name Is Earl, if you look at the raw viewership numbers, is one of the most popular shows that ever aired on NBC, based upon viewers per episode the first time that it aired. Like, it was getting more viewers than The Office. It's just that The Office was able to, like, market itself and have tie-in, like, merchandise better.
Yeah.
So
no, The Office was able to do merch in a way that no other sitcom had, not since, like, Friends.
Yeah. So, like, that's it. But My Name Is Earl had more eyeballs on it, which is, like, this is the stuff that they talk about. So it has come out that we're promised a 5th season. So we're like, we can end the 4th season on a cliffhanger. So that's the reason they did it. They're like the 0.1% series that ended on a cliffhanger knowing we'll be able to resolve this cliffhanger. And the only reason that My Name Is Earl did not get to resolve that cliffhanger was because the production company wanted to charge more per episode to NBC. And NBC, like, stalled out on them before being like, yeah, fine, we'll give them the money. But by then, the production company's like, yeah, we're not going to make the show anymore. Fuck you. So there was nowhere to shoot the series. So, like, just a lesson in negotiation, I guess. We're veering into, like, not happy report distraction stuff when I talk about negotiations. So back to My Name Is Earl. They knew they were going to get a 5th season. So they had it all worked out for how the series was going to end. First of all, if you don't remember, spoilers for the season 4, episode 27 of My Name Is Earl, Dodge's dad. The cliffhanger is, who is Earl Jr.'s father? Because he was born black, so it was a pretty, like, big conceit was that he was going to be Darnell the Crabman's son, despite being named Earl Jr. Just that the show's very clever. Greg Garcia, very good. But then it finds out at the end that, surprise, Dodge is actually Earl's biological son, and Earl Jr. is not Darnell's son. And they were going to have it be some famous African-American actor who had come through Camden that Joy had slept with while she was married to Earl and cheating on Earl with Darnell. So, you know, just like fun, wholesome television. At some point, I think Kevin Hart was rumored to, but like, so that ends up not happening. But then how the show was going to end is the final episode, someone was going to come to Earl saying, you're on my list of bad things that I've done. And what has happened is by Earl creating his karma list, inspired by Carson Daly after getting hit by a car, winning his money, he has now begun to inspire the movement of other people creating lists of the things that they have done wrong and trying to make up for it. So at the end of it, he ends up ripping up his list because he realized that by inspiring other people to look back at their actions and make up for the mistakes in their lives, he has put in an infinite amount of good into the world. So he has made up for everything on his list, which, like, at the beginning was only about 200 items. Because he starts adding items by like the 4th episode, and I think it's like 216 is the first one that he adds. Don't quote me on that, but it was never like 4,000 things that he had done wrong. It was less than 300 in the beginning. And that's how they were going to end it. And they've talked about, like, this is a really good thing about how him, karma, trying to put better into the world makes this global shift into that universe. And I like that. I like that as an ending. right? It works. Raising Hope has nice references to the whole My Name is Earl. A man from Camden County has a list and he finally finished it, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. So knowing that, I'm like, I'm going to go back to the show. And I have to tell you, watching the show, they did put a lot of these nice moments where you could see how his actions were beginning to affect the world around him. So, like, it wouldn't have been a How I Met Your Mother moment where, like, oh, so you just wasted 9 years of your time asking us for permission to date our aunt now that mom's dead. Like, they clearly had a plan, and that plan worked with the show as they presented it. Right?
Right.
So it works. But that last episode is just, it moves so fast. You have Norm Macdonald there as Chubby Jr. or Little Chubby, and now he's an asshole again because he had his testicles replaced with bull testicles, and like it does not feel like the final episode of a series, and we know that it wasn't meant to be. But it sucks that it is. Like, at the end of the day, that's the last episode of My Name is Earl. And they do a really good, like, that show, like, Our Cops is On, or Our Other Cops is On. Are you familiar with those two episodes of My Name is Earl? Do you remember? Like,
no.
Okay, so they do an episode in the second season called Our Cops is On. And essentially Cops, the famous show that followed, like, police, come to Camden County to do an episode. And Earl, as a former thief with, like, a bunch of thief friends, they feature prominently in this episode of Cops that takes place in their town. So, like, it's a boring day it's a boring Sunday at the Crab Shack, and Randy's reading the TV list. He's like, Our Cops is on. So they put it on, and essentially they do a parody episode of Cops. And then they do another one called Our Other Cops is On, when Randy is a prison guard, when Earl is eventually imprisoned. This is all stuff that happens in My Name is Earl, by the way. I love the show. I do love the show. And Randy's getting guff from a lot of the prisoners because he's Randy. He's meant to be like a little slow. He's naive. He's innocent, despite having a brother who's a crook and getting him involved in all this stuff. And the prisoners are taking advantage of him. And then Our Other Cops is On. In that episode, he steals a cop car, like, on his own. So he instantly gets the respect of the prisoners. So it's like, it's this interesting thing, and they're shot, and they're meant to be like you're sitting there watching an episode of Cops, which is fun. And so that what they do in the fourth season is they parody the show Inside Probe, which, like, My Name is Earl is a fucking time capsule of what television used to be, and not just because they're watching H&R Puffin stuff all the time on the TV. Like, Inside Probe, the penultimate episode is a two-parter called Inside Probe, looking into the death of the owner of the Crab Shack. And it's excellent because it's shot like an episode of Inside Probe. Geraldo Rivera is there doing all the interviews, and they have the talking head segments. So, like, that's a really strong episode. And it kind of sticks with you, too, because it solves, like, who runs this Crab Shack? Which is a question you kind of have the whole series, and then come to find out, spoilers for the penultimate episode of My Name is Earl, there was a blackout while he was getting the floor in the bathroom re-cemented, and he fell off the little plywood walkways into the cement, hit his head on the way down, so his body just sank into the cement. And it's revealed that his nose has been visible in the concrete, and everybody just thought it was a doorstop because it's at the perfect point to be that. So, like, that's an episode, like, and those episodes stick with me. Those last two episodes stick with me. Like, Norm Macdonald, Burt Reynolds plays Chubby, right, who owns all the stuff in town. So then Burt Reynolds passes away, R.I.P. Burt Reynolds. And so Norm Macdonald is the only logical choice to play Burt Reynolds' son. I'm sorry. And they get him, and he's fantastic in the series. He's so good in the couple episodes that he's in. So to finally have him come back, and the reveal be that Joy forever thought that he was Dodge's father, but she didn't want to tell him because, you know, a girl, the same day she was going to say, I'm pregnant with your child, he went to her, he said, okay, so here's a bus ticket, you can leave town, or here's this gun. So what do you choose, the bus ticket or the gun? And the woman grabs the bus ticket, runs away. So it's just rewatching it, going through My Name is Earl for at least my third time. That last episode is disappointing, and I thought that it wouldn't be as disappointing now that I've heard from Greg Garcia, the creator of the show, and actors who had like read what was planned talk about it. But that episode is still just a disappointment. And
I mean, but that's the Greg Garcia story, right? Is that he always just he has a show going, it's getting weirdly popular, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, the network is like rug pulls him.
Yeah. I mean, Yes Dear. Yeah, I don't know how Yes Dear ended. Yes, it's weird that Yes Dear isn't available anywhere. Raising Hope. The final episode of Raising Hope is kind of hopeful. I'll admit that. Sprung on Amazon Prime was written very much to be a contained story. So that one's kind of the best because he knew he had 9 episodes to fill, and he very clearly had a story to tell, and he tells that story. And then the guest book, like exactly what you're talking about, it weirdly gets popular and then the rug is pulled out from it. The guest book, by its very nature of being an anthology series, like if there had never been a season 2 of the guest book, it would have been fine. I'm happy there was a season 2 of the guest book because there are 2 fantastic episodes in it. Season 1 has some good stuff too. I think I'm probably going to do the guest book next. I got to be completely honest with you. I'm not doing the guest book, but I'm like, yeah, it's been a while since I watched them. And there's some strong episodes there. But yeah, so My Name is Earl. I guess, do we talk about Michelle Trachtenberg and how fucking weird that was? Or Gene Hackman? Like, all of the celebrity passing away?
It's been really weird. Yeah. The Michelle Trachtenberg one is awful. Like, the from some of the stuff as far as, like, this coming from a liver transplant and complications in that regard and stuff. And that's just fucking scary, right?
Yeah.
Like that, anyways.
Also, she's our age. There's that little chestnut too.
Well, right. That's what I mean. Is like we're getting to that point where like this is the kind of stuff now. I don't know. Scares the shit out of you, man. And then like the Gene Hackman stuff is just weird right now. They don't I don't even know everything that's happened, but that's just gotten wild. So 2025 is really not helping out in the whole like, hey, everything's going to shit year.
Yeah, right. I just don't know. Do you want to do anything with the Oscars, or are you ready to go? I'm like so over the Oscars. I can name 2 things that are nominated.
I'm glad Enclave is getting the kind of buzz or Conclave is getting the kind of stuff that it's getting. I think that was a really interesting one this year. I wish there had been a little bit more in terms of some of the weirder stuff this year. Your Monster from Sundance earlier this year, I think, deserved a little bit more recognition towards this time of the year. Surprised to not see Wicked in as many places. I mean, still present, but thought we'd see more of it.
I don't want Wicked to win Best Picture. That's my prediction and hope for tonight. I really do not want Wicked to win Best Picture. And it's not that I didn't enjoy the film. I just didn't get a full story. And that really bums me out.
Yeah. They've gotten away with it already. There's no stopping them now. But the fact that they split it into 2 movies has continued to feel like a really gross move. I don't know. I am happy to say that in terms of Sundance recognition, like The Substance getting like the weird following that it's gotten this year has been awesome. So like cool about excited about that.
Yeah. But we used to do a whole big like, yeah, here's what our guys are. We're not doing that, but we'll probably have things to say next week about who does win and all of that. And promise of talking about Star of Providence next week. And also the Phantom beat-em-up game that had a demo release that I don't think either of us gave enough time to properly discuss it. But we loved the Phantom at the Say Report. So I have a Funko of the Phantom. It was my first Funko, was the Phantom, the ghost who walks. So yeah. So I think that's everything. Anything else you want to make sure we touch on this week, Sejohn?
No, no. Let's wrap this one up for today.
Yeah, I think I hear it in your voice what you're hesitating about, and I agree. So we'll see where things are next week. That being said, if you want to keep the conversation going, we do have a Discord available. You can get an invitation wherever we're available on social media, which as of this recording is Facebook and X, formerly Twitter. Just go to our profile about information and there's an invitation right there. Click and you can be in the Discord with us and all of our friends as we discuss more topics related to the show. If you don't want to join a Discord or you don't know what Discord is, it's a great alternative to Skype, but we'll touch on that the next 4th episode. So 428, I guess we're going to be talking about Skype a little bit. You can always send an email to thesayReport@gmail.com and we can correspond like it's the early 2000s. We'll also send an invitation to you on Discord, and I will personally walk you through how to get a Discord account if that's how you would prefer to communicate with us. Otherwise, you can just email, put my name in the subject line if it's for me, Sejohn's name in the subject line if it's for him, and we'll make sure that it is for our eyes only. One more thing. We did a very special episode on Empire Records. It's available on any of the podcast feeds. We don't post that one up on YouTube like we do with all the regular episodes. Sejohn, you know what we didn't touch on that blows my mind? That I found out about that movie?
What?
Billy Joe Armstrong, from Green Day, he was originally going to play Burko.
Oh.
Yeah, right? It's a bit of a kick in the nuts. But the fact that I did not find that till after we had recorded the episode, I thought it was worth mentioning here.
That definitely worth mentioning.
Yeah, as a big fan of Green Day, right? So that's everything. Thanks again for joining us this episode. Please stop using Fletch tropes in your television episodes, and William, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.